According to the authorities in South Carolina where she died, the Greenville PD and emergency personnel responded to a report of an unresponsive female at an apartment complex just before 2 p.m. yesterday. Just that term, unresponsive female.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Famous Cisco TV. It's your girl Wendy, and today we are analyzing the departing of Hayden Panettiere, the dark story behind the fame.
The postpartum thing, she talked about it pretty bravely because, you're going to talk about that, people are going to judge you, because we all say, like, a mother should love her kids. Right. Well, it's more complicated than that. It is. I have not a lot of empathy for this woman on trial right now for killing her 3 kids, but I recognize postpartum depression as a very real thing. A lot of mothers have had it.
Hayden spent 36 years responding to everything around her. She responded to directors, producers, managers, cameras, red carpets, expectations, fame, pressure, and pain. She was taught from childhood to perform, to smile, to cry on command, to be charming, to be energetic, to sparkle no matter what was happening inside her. And then came one of the most disturbing revelations from her memoir. Hayden wrote that as a teenager, she was allegedly given amphetamines before red carpet appearances, so she would be more peppy, more energetic, more dazzling for the cameras. She did not name the person who gave them to her, and we should not invent a name or title. But the question is not chilling, who looked at a teenage girl and decided that being herself was not enough? Who decided she needed something in her system to perform better for Hollywood? Hayden had been taught to respond to adults from the time she was a child, and that pattern appears again and again in the stories she later told. The Hollywood machine wanted her smiling, responsive, and ready, and according to Hayden's own account, she learned very early that the show must go on. And this is where Hayden's story becomes very darker in her memoir. She described being around 18 years old when a woman she trusted took her onto a yacht and brought her below deck to a room where an older British singer-songwriter was waiting. According to Hayden, she was told to get into bed with him, and she described almost automatically following the instructions because she had spent so much of her childhood doing what adults told her to do. She eventually removed herself from the situation and she chose not to publicly identify the person. Hayden also described another private gathering where she felt older men in the entertainment industry looking at her like a commodity rather than a young woman. According to her account, one respected actor and director exposed himself to her as she was preparing to leave. Again, she did not identify him. What is particularly disturbing is how almost normal these experiences seem to have become to her. When somebody grows up surrounded by adult behavior, power, money, and people who rarely hear the word no, things that should be shocking can start feeling routine. We have heard for years about casting coaches, powerful executives, inappropriate auditions, and people abusing their positions in Hollywood. But imagine navigating that world when you have been working since childhood and have not yet learned all the boundaries even grown adults struggle to enforce. Then came success on an extraordinary level. Heroes made Hayden internationally famous. Nashville kept her on the television for years. Everybody knew her face. Everybody wanted a photograph. Everybody wanted access. Everybody wanted to say they knew her. But fame can create relationships, that feel permanent only while the spotlight is shining. Hayden later spoke about feeling used and about people wanting things from her. And then her personal life became increasingly complicated. She had a long relationship with heavyweight boxing champion Wladimir. They became engaged and welcomed their daughter Kaya in 2014. From the outside, it looked like a beautiful Hollywood love story. The actress, the boxing champion, the baby, the glamorous photographs. But after giving birth, Hayden experienced severe postpartum depression. She later spoke openly about how devastating that period was and made clear that struggling with postpartum depression did not mean she did not love her daughter. At the same time, alcohol was becoming increasingly destructive in her life, and she later revealed struggles involving opioids as well. She went to treatment, she relapsed, she tried again, and one of the saddest parts of her story is that while everybody seemed to be around her when she was successful, Hayden later described feeling desperately alone when her life began to fall apart. And then things became even more difficult. Hayden said filming Nashville could feel traumatizing because the storylines involving her character Juliet Barnes began reflecting parts of Hayden's own life: addiction, depression, emotional instability, and complicated relationships. Imagine going to work while battling something privately and then having to perform a fictional version of that exact pain in front of cameras. Yet, Hayden continued showing up, she continued performing. Then came Hickerson. Their relationship became associated with serious domestic violence allegations. Hickerson was arrested in connection with incidents involving Hayden and later served jail time after pleading no contest to felony domestic violence charges. Hayden eventually spoke publicly about escaping what she described as an abusive relationship, saying she hoped telling her story might help somebody else. Their connection later became complicated again, with reports that they reconnected and remained in contact. And after Hayden's death, reports said she had arrived in South Carolina from Los Angeles shortly before she died, reportedly accompanied by the same Hickerson. Naturally, people began asking questions because of their past history. But his past does not automatically tell us what happened during Hayden's final hours, and we cannot turn suspicion into fact. Now, then came August 16, 2026. Hayden Panettiere was found unresponsive. Emergency dispatch communications reportedly referenced a suspected overdose and cardiac arrest. That immediately created headline speculation and questions. But my famous fam, this distinction is extremely important. Authorities have not officially declared that Hayden died from an overdose, and they have not officially declared her death a suicide. Toxicology and additional findings are still pending. So although the 911 call may raise serious questions, we cannot write the ending before investigators do. What we can do is look back at what Hayden herself had been revealing only months earlier. She talked about addiction. She talked about loneliness. She talked about being used. She talked about inappropriate situations in Hollywood. She talked about childhood pressure. She talked about postpartum depression. She talked about abusive relationships. She talked about people disappearing when her life became difficult. And then, only months after releasing this is me, a reckoning, she was gone. That is why people are looking at the final days of her life with so many questions. Not because we should invent conspiracy theories, but because Hayden had only just begun publicly connecting the pieces of a life that had been extraordinarily complicated from childhood. And maybe that is the bigger question in Hayden Panettiere's story. Not simply what happened in the final hours, but what happened during the 36 years before then. Who protected Hayden when she was a child? Who decided a teenager needed amphetamines before stepping onto a red carpet? Who placed young actresses in environments with powerful adults and expected them to know how to protect themselves? Who was around when Hayden was famous, successful, beautiful, profitable, and constantly photographed? And who remained when the career slowed down? Who was there when postpartum depression arrived? Who stayed when addiction took over? Who stayed when relationships became destructive? Who stayed when she lost her younger brother Jensen and grief changed her life again? Hollywood loves people who respond. It loves people who smile when told to smile, perform when told to perform, and keep walking even when everything inside them is collapsing. But what happens when that person cannot perform anymore? Hayden Panettiere was more than Claire Bennett, more than Juliet Barnes, more than Kirby Reed, more than Wladimir, former fiancé, more than Brian Hickerson, former partner, more than an addiction, headline, and certainly more than an emergency call. She was a human being who had been performing almost from the moment she entered this world. And perhaps the most haunting part of all is that only near the end of her life did Hayden finally begin explaining what all that performing had cost her. Now, rest in peace, Hayden Panettiere. Famous fam, tell me respectfully in the comments after hearing what Hayden revealed in her memoir and interviews. Do you look at her story differently now? And do you believe Hollywood truly protects the children it turns into stars, or does it protect the machine first? Until next time, famous fam, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and remember, behind every famous face is a human story the cameras may never fully capture. Thank you for watching Famous Faces Group TV. It's been your girl Wendy, and I will see you in the next one. God bless you. Bye bye.